A Volkswagen owner paid $8,500 for a DSG transmission replacement last week. What they didn't realize is that a hidden 30-second factory reset could have prevented the entire bill. It's not a dealer-only procedure, and it's not a special software update. It's a built-in reset function programmed into Volkswagen vehicles for over a decade, and almost nobody uses it. Right now, thousands of VW owners are driving with factory features designed to recalibrate systems, protect major components, and prevent catastrophic repairs. Features so deeply buried that 99% of drivers only discover them after the damage is done. Today, I'm revealing 10 secret Volkswagen functions that almost no one talks about. If you drive anything in the VAG group and have never heard of these, stay until the end, because secret number 1 is a 30-second adaptive reset that has prevented transmission replacements worth more than the car itself. This is Volkswagen Guide. Let's get into it. Secret number 10, the hidden fuel pump prime reset. Let's start with something most Volkswagen owners will never think about until the day their car suddenly won't start properly, and this hidden procedure could save them from an expensive misdiagnosis. Modern Volkswagen fuel systems operate under extremely high pressure, particularly on TSI and TDI engines where direct injection requires precise fuel delivery at pressures that older port injection systems never reached. When the fuel system loses prime, either from running the tank very low after a fuel filter replacement or following any work that requires disconnecting fuel lines, the system needs to be reprimed before normal operation can resume. Most owners don't know this procedure exists. So when the car struggles to start after one of these situations, they assume something is wrong with the fuel pump, the filter, or the injection system itself. They take it to a dealer or specialist, diagnostic time gets charged, and often, parts get replaced that were never actually faulty. The fuel pump prime reset is a hidden procedure that forces the fuel pump to run and rebuild system pressure without cranking the engine. Here's how it works on most modern VW models. Turn the ignition to the on position without starting the engine. Wait approximately 10 seconds. You should hear the fuel pump run briefly as it primes the system. Turn the ignition off. Repeat this cycle 3 to 5 times. Each time, the pump runs and builds additional pressure in the system. After the final cycle, attempt to start the engine normally. What you've just done is manually prime the fuel system, ensuring the high-pressure pump has adequate supply and the injectors have fuel available for combustion. On most vehicles, this eliminates hard starting or extended cranking that would otherwise occur after the system has been depressurized. This procedure is particularly important after fuel filter replacement on TDI engines, where the filter housing can trap air if not properly filled before installation. That trapped air creates a prime loss that no amount of cranking will resolve quickly, but 5 ignition cycles with the pump priming each time will clear it without issue. But while a fuel pump prime is something you might need once or twice during your ownership, the next secret is something that happens every single time someone replaces a battery without knowing what they're supposed to do afterward. Secret number 9. The secret battery registration requirement. Here's a maintenance reality that catches thousands of Volkswagen owners completely off guard, usually about 6 months after they've replaced their battery for the first time. On most modern VW models from approximately 2008 onward, the vehicle's energy management system actively monitors and learns the characteristics of the specific battery installed in the car. It tracks charge acceptance, internal resistance, age-related capacity loss, and discharge patterns. Over time, the system builds a complete profile of that battery and uses it to manage charging rates, start-stop system operation, and electrical load distribution across the vehicle. Here's where the problem happens. When you replace the battery with a new one, the energy management system doesn't automatically know a new battery has been installed. It continues running the old battery's learned profile, applying charging strategies designed for a worn battery to a brand new unit. That means potential overcharging, incorrect start-stop behavior, and charging rates that don't match what the new battery actually needs. The result shows up in several ways. The new battery fails prematurely, often within 12 to 18 months instead of the expected 4 to 5 years. The start-stop system behaves erratically or stops working entirely. Electrical gremlins appear, unexplained faults, warning lights that come and go, systems that don't behave consistently. And when owners take the car back to wherever they bought the battery, they're told the battery must be defective and they're sold a replacement. But the cycle repeats itself. What nobody told them is that the battery needed to be registered to the vehicle's ECU after installation. That registration clears the old battery profile, tells the energy management system a new battery with full capacity has been installed, and allows it to begin learning the correct charging parameters from day one. Dealers know this. They perform battery registration automatically when they replace batteries during service. They also charge $150 to $200 just for the coding procedure if you bring them a battery you installed yourself and ask them to register it after the fact. But the registration can be performed by any competent independent shop with proper diagnostic equipment, or by the owner themselves if they have VCDS or OBDeleven access, which we'll cover later in this list. The procedure takes approximately 2 minutes and involves accessing the Energy Management Control module and entering the new battery's specifications, capacity in amp hours, and part number. It's a hidden requirement that Volkswagen doesn't prominently advertise, most battery retailers never mention, and it costs owners hundreds in premature battery failures and diagnostic fees when they don't know it needs to be done. And if a battery registration is something most owners discover too late, the next secret is something almost nobody discovers until the damage has already cost them thousands. Secret number 8. The sunroof drain flood trap. This one is expensive to ignore, very common, and honestly preventable. Yet Volkswagen has never, in any owner's manual I've seen, told owners this maintenance task needs to be performed. Every Volkswagen with a sunroof has a drain system built into the roof. The sunroof seal isn't watertight. It's designed to allow water past the glass, where it's collected in drain channels at each corner of the sunroof opening and routed down through drain tubes that run underneath the vehicle. Under normal conditions, this system works perfectly. Rain hits the sunroof, water flows into the drains, and it exits harmlessly underneath the car. But those drain tubes are narrow, typically around 10 millimeters in diameter, and they run through areas where leaves, dirt, pollen, and debris accumulate. Over time, the drains clog, and when that happens, the water that's supposed to drain away has nowhere to go except inside the vehicle. Here's where it gets expensive. The water doesn't just overflow onto the carpet, though that happens too. It flows down through the A-pillar or C-pillar directly onto electrical components and control modules that were never designed to get wet. The comfort control module, which manages windows, locks, mirrors, and other convenience functions, is often mounted low in the footwell area. The BCM, body control module, can be located in similarly vulnerable positions depending on the model. Wiring harnesses run through these pillar areas, and when water saturates them, corrosion begins immediately. The symptoms appear slowly at first. Intermittent electrical faults, windows that work sometimes and not others, door locks that randomly fail. Then the problems accelerate. Warning lights appear. Systems stop working entirely. Water-soaked carpet develops mold and mildew. And when the vehicle finally goes to a dealer for diagnosis, they discover extensive water damage to multiple control modules, corroded wiring harnesses, and a repair estimate that can easily hit $2,000 to $4,000 depending on what failed. The preventive maintenance that would have avoided all of this costs nothing and takes 10 minutes twice a year. Open the sunroof fully. Locate the drain holes at each corner of the sunroof opening, usually visible as small openings in the sunroof cassette. Pour a small amount of water into each drain and watch where it exits underneath the vehicle near each wheel well. If the water drains freely, the system is clear. If it drains slowly or doesn't drain at all, the tube is clogged. Clearing clogged drains can be done with compressed air, a length of flexible trimmer line carefully fed down the drain tube, or by disconnecting the drain tube from underneath and flushing it from below. Once clear, the drains should be checked and cleaned twice a year. It's the first genuinely expensive preventable failure on this list. It's something Volkswagen has never prominently told owners to maintain, and the number of VWs that have been flooded from clogged sunroof drains is staggering. But while sunroof drain maintenance is something you perform twice a year, the next secret is about a driving habit most owners repeat every single day without realizing the damage it's causing. Secret number 7. The turbo cool down myth. There's a specific habit that Psy and Didi owners repeat constantly, and it's quietly shortening the service life of one of the most expensive components under the hood. Turbocharged engines generate enormous heat. The turbocharger itself spins at speeds exceeding 100,000 RPM, and the exhaust gases passing through the turbine side can reach temperatures well above 800 degrees Celsius under full load. That heat is managed during operation by engine oil that circulates through the turbo's bearing assembly, providing both lubrication and cooling. Here's the problem. When you shut off the engine immediately after hard driving, highway speeds, aggressive acceleration, or sustained high load, the oil circulation stops instantly, but the turbocharger is still incredibly hot. With no oil flowing, the residual heat inside the turbo bearing assembly literally cooks the oil that's trapped in the bearing housing. That cooked oil forms carbon deposits on the bearing surfaces and inside the oil passages. Over time, those deposits accumulate, restrict oil flow, increase bearing friction, and accelerate turbo wear. This is called heat soak, and it's a well-documented failure mode in turbocharged engines that are consistently shut down immediately after hard use. The symptoms don't appear immediately. It takes thousands of heat cycles before the accumulated damage becomes noticeable. But eventually, the turbo develops bearing noise, shaft play, oil consumption from seal failure, or complete bearing seizure that requires turbocharger replacement. Replacement cost for a TCI or TDI turbocharger, depending on model and whether you're using OEM or aftermarket parts, ranges from $1,200 to $2,800 including labor. And a significant percentage of those failures are accelerated by how owners treat their turbocharged Volkswagen. The preventive habit is simple. After any period of hard driving, allow the engine to idle for 30 to 60 seconds before shutting it off. That idle time allows oil to continue circulating through the turbo, carrying away the residual heat before oil flow stops. It doesn't need to be a long cool down. Just enough time for the turbo to drop from peak temperature to a range where the stationary oil won't cook. It's a daily driving habit that affects one of the most expensive failure points on modern Volkswagens, and most owners have no idea it's even a consideration because they've never owned a turbocharged vehicle before, and Volkswagen doesn't explain it in the manual. And if heat soak is a slow burn failure mode most owners never see coming, the next secret causes immediate faults that often get misdiagnosed as expensive component failures. Secret number 6, the steering angle sensor reset. This is one of the most common causes of unnecessary parts replacement and diagnostic fees in modern Volkswagens, and it comes from a simple reset procedure that most shops either don't know about or don't bother performing before replacing parts. The steering angle sensor is a small component mounted on the steering column that tells the vehicle's stability control, ABS, and steering assist systems exactly where the steering wheel is pointed at any given moment. That information is critical for systems like ESC, which needs to know driver intent versus actual vehicle direction to detect and correct skids or loss of control. The sensor is calibrated to a 0 position, straight ahead, and it tracks steering input in both directions from that center point. Under normal operation, the calibration remains accurate indefinitely, but certain events can throw it off. A battery disconnect without proper procedure, a wheel alignment where the steering wheel position changes slightly, suspension work that affects ride height or steering geometry. Any of these can offset the sensor's learned 0 position. When the steering angle sensor calibration is incorrect, the symptoms are immediate and alarming. ESC warning lights appear. ABS faults trigger. The steering feels strange, sometimes pulling slightly or giving inconsistent feedback. The vehicle may enter a reduced power mode. and when owners take it to a shop for diagnosis, the scan tool shows steering angle sensor faults. The natural conclusion from many shops is that the sensor itself has failed and needs replacement. They quote $300 to $500 for a new sensor and installation. The sensor gets replaced. And the fault often comes right back because the new sensor also isn't calibrated. What actually needed to happen was a steering angle sensor reset. It's a procedure that reestablishes the zero position and tells the system where straight ahead actually is. On most Volkswagens, it requires diagnostic software, VCDS, OBDeleven, or dealer-level tools, and takes approximately 5 minutes to perform. The vehicle is placed on level ground with the steering wheel centered. The reset procedure is initiated through the ABS or steering control module. The system learns the new zero position, the fault's clear, and everything returns to normal operation. No new sensor, no parts cost, just a calibration that should have been the first diagnostic step. This is a hidden reset that prevents unnecessary parts replacement, saves hundreds in diagnostic and repair costs, and highlights how many expensive repairs are actually software calibration issues that dealers and shops prefer to solve with hardware replacement. And if a steering angle reset is something most owners only need once after specific service work, the next secret is a maintenance decision that affects engine longevity from the day you buy the car. Secret number 5. The long life oil interval trap. This is where we need to talk about one of Volkswagen's most controversial service recommendations and why following the factory maintenance schedule might actually be shortening your engine's lifespan. Volkswagen markets something called long life service on many of its models. Under this service regime, oil change intervals are determined not by a fixed mileage, but by a combination of engine operating hours, driving conditions, and oil quality sensors. In ideal conditions, highway driving, moderate climate, and light loads, long life intervals can extend to 30,000 kilometers or even longer before the vehicle requests an oil change. On paper, this sounds brilliant. Advanced engineering, sophisticated monitoring, and reduced maintenance frequency. But in reality, particularly for owners who do significant city driving, short trips, or operate in extreme climates, it's a recipe for accelerated engine wear that doesn't show up until well past the warranty period. But in the real world, long life intervals means oil that's been in the engine for 25,000 to 30,000 kilometers has been heat cycled thousands of times. The additives that control viscosity, prevent oxidation, and suspend contaminants have degraded significantly. On C engines, which run high specific output and generate substantial heat, the oil is working harder than it would in a naturally aspirated engine of similar displacement. That accelerated breakdown means the oil at 30,000 kilometers is doing a fraction of the protective work it did when it was fresh. The consequences show up as sludge buildup on internal engine surfaces, particularly on the back of the intake valves on direct injection engines. Timing chain wear accelerates because the chain tensioner operates hydraulically, and degraded oil affects hydraulic pressure consistency. Oil consumption increases as worn oil loses its ability to maintain proper sealing at the piston rings. And eventually, typically beyond 120,000 kilometers, engines that followed long life intervals show more wear than engines that were serviced on shorter intervals. The enthusiast community figured this out years ago. Independent Volkswagen specialists consistently recommend switching from long life service to fixed interval service and performing oil changes every 8,000 to 10,000 kilometers regardless of what the onboard computer says. Some owners run even shorter intervals, 5,000 to 7,000 kilometers, particularly on TSI engines with known oil consumption issues. Changing the service interval type typically requires VCDs or OBDeleven access to the engine control module or instrument cluster. The setting lives in adaptation channels, and once changed, the vehicle calculates service intervals based on the selected schedule rather than variable conditions. This setting affects every single service interval for the life of the vehicle. It goes directly against Volkswagen's factory recommendation, and yet independent data consistently shows that engines maintained on shorter intervals survive longer with fewer problems. But if oil service intervals are a long-term maintenance decision, the next secret gives you access to real-time information that most owners never see, but dealers use constantly. Secret number 4, the hidden service menu, cluster engineering mode. Every Volkswagen from the late 1990s onward has a diagnostic menu hidden inside the instrument cluster, and accessing it requires nothing more than a button combination that's been passed through enthusiast communities for over 2 decades. This menu, sometimes called service mode, engineering mode, or the secret menu, provides access to real-time sensor data and diagnostic information that Volkswagen intended for dealer technicians, but never locked away from owners who know the access procedure. The procedure varies slightly by generation, but here's the most common method for MK5, MK6, and MK7 vehicles. With the ignition off, press and hold the trip reset button on the instrument cluster or the right button on the wiper stalk on some models. While holding it, turn the ignition to the on position without starting the engine and continue holding the button. Within a few seconds, the display will change. Once you see either the word test or a number sequence, you're now in the service menu. Navigate through the screens using the trip reset button or cluster controls. The available information depends on model and year, but common readouts include actual coolant temperature in degrees Celsius, not the simplified gauge most clusters show. Oil temperature, which is critical for knowing when the engine has reached full operating temperature, something the standard dash never displays. Battery voltage under load, showing whether the charging system is functioning correctly. Total engine runtime hours, which reveals actual use regardless of odometer mileage. And fuel consumption averages over extended periods beyond what the trip computer normally shows. Some models display additional sensor data, throttle position, manifold pressure on turbocharged engines, individual wheel speeds, and other parameters that help diagnose issues without expensive scan tools. This is the first secret on this list that gives owners the same diagnostic visibility dealers have, and once you've seen what's available in the hidden service menu, you start realizing just how much information Volkswagen collects but doesn't normally show you. And that realization leads directly to the next level of access. Secret number 3, VCDS and OBDeleven, the factory backdoor. Everything we've discussed so far has been button combinations, manual procedures, and information available through hidden menus. But to unlock the full depth of what's actually hidden inside of Volkswagen's electronics, you need diagnostic software that speaks the factory language. And for Volkswagen vehicles, 2 tools dominate: VCDS and OBDeleven. VCDS, formerly VAG-CALM, is a Windows-based diagnostic software developed specifically for Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, and Skoda. It connects through a proprietary interface cable to the OBD2 port and gives complete access to every control module in the vehicle. While OBDeleven is the modern alternative, Bluetooth-based, smartphone-controlled, and more user-friendly while offering similar functionality. Here's what these tools actually unlock beyond basic code reading. Module coding that enables features already present in the hardware but disabled from the factory. Adaptation channels that modify how existing systems behave. Live data streaming from every sensor simultaneously. Output tests that activate individual components for diagnostic purposes, and critically for this list, the resets and calibrations that prevent expensive misdiagnoses. Common modifications Volkswagen owners perform include activating convenience close from the key fob, where holding lock closes all windows, enabling or adjusting coming home and leaving home lighting duration, changing doctrinal behavior and brightness, activating needle sweep on startup, enabling digital speed display in the instrument cluster, customizing auto door lock and unlock behavior based on speed or transmission position. Beyond convenience features, VCDS and OBDeleven perform the critical service and calibration procedures we've discussed. Battery registration after replacement, steering angle sensor reset after alignment or suspension work, service interval type selection between long life and fixed schedules, and the transmission adaptations that number 1 on this list depends on entirely. The cost is lower than most people expect, A genuine Rostec VCD's cable runs $200 to $600 depending on the version, and it's a lifetime purchase. While OBDeleven's Bluetooth dongle costs $80 to $200 with credits or subscription required for advanced functions. This is the gateway tool that makes everything else possible, and once you have VCDs or OBDeleven access, you realize just how much control Volkswagen keeps locked away from owners who don't know these tools exist. But even with full diagnostic access, there's one specific maintenance item that more owners get wrong than anything else on this list, and it's directly connected to the most expensive failure mode at number 1. Secret number 2. The DSG Service Interval Reality. Here's the maintenance reality that catches more Volkswagen DIG owners off guard than any other service item. And it's one that Volkswagen's marketing has deliberately covered for over a decade. The direct shift gearbox is marketed as advanced technology, smooth, fast shifts, sports car performance with exceptional efficiency. What the marketing materials don't emphasize, and what most dealers don't proactively mention, is that the DSG requires regular fluid and filter service at intervals significantly shorter than what most owners expect from an automatic transmission. The official service interval varies by market and model year, but it generally falls between 60,000 and 80,000 kilometers for the first service, then every 60,000 kilometers thereafter. In North America, some model years list DSG service as lifetime with no specified interval, which has led thousands of owners to believe the transmission never needs service. That's false, and the failure data proves it. DSG fluid degrades over time just like any transmission fluid. It loses viscosity, its friction modifiers break down, and it accumulates microscopic clutch material particles from normal wear. The filter that protects the mechatronic unit from those particles has a service life, and once it's saturated, it restricts flow and starves the system of adequate hydraulic pressure. When DSG service is skipped or delayed significantly beyond the proper interval, several failure modes accelerate. Clutch pack wear increases because degraded fluid doesn't provide adequate friction control during engagement. The mechatronic unit, which controls all hydraulic functions, begins accumulating varnish deposits in its internal passages. Shift quality deteriorates. Harsh shifts, shuddering, hesitation during engagement. And eventually, internal damage accumulates to the point where the only solution is mechatronic replacement or full transmission overhaul. That repair costs between $5,000 and $9,000 depending on what failed and how extensive the damage is. Meanwhile, proper DSG service, fluid, filter, and mechatronic adaptation reset costs $300 to $600 at an independent specialist. The reason so many owners skip this service is because they're either unaware it exists or they've been told by dealers that their specific model doesn't require it under normal use. The truth, backed by every independent transmission specialist who works on DSGs daily, is that every DSG needs service, and skipping it is the primary cause of premature failure. DSG service prevents problems. But when the service has been skipped and symptoms appear, there's one more hidden function that can save the transmission before internal damage becomes irreversible. And that's where we're going next. Secret number 1. The DSG Adaptive Reset, the 8500 secret. A Volkswagen owner in Germany was quoted $8,500 for a complete DSG replacement last month. With 95,000 kilometers, harsh shifts, hesitation during engagement, and occasional jerking under light throttle. The diagnostic scan showed adaptation values out of range. The conclusion was clear: internal wear, mechatronic failure, and transmission replacement required. Except before authorizing that repair, the owner joined a VAG enthusiast forum and described the symptoms. Multiple experienced members suggested the same thing. Try a DSG Adaptive Reset first. 30 seconds with VCDs. Clear the learned adaptation values. Let the mechatronic relearn clutch engagement from a clean baseline. The owner borrowed a friend's VCDs cable, performed the reset in their driveway, and took the car for a 50-kilometer drive following the relearn procedure. The harsh shifts smoothed out. the hesitation disappeared, the jerking stopped, and the transmission returned to normal operation. No replacement, no mechatronic swap. Just corrupted adaptation data that needed to be cleared. That's why this is number 1. Not because the reset fixes every DSG problem, but because it's a factory-programmed diagnostic procedure that dealers rarely try before quoting transmission replacement, and the number of owners who've paid thousands for repairs that a reset would have prevented is genuinely staggering. Let me explain what's actually happening inside the DSG and why this reset matters so much. The mechatronic unit continuously adapts clutch engagement points to compensate for normal friction material wear. As the clutches wear over tens of thousands of kilometers, the mechatronic adjusts pressure and timing to maintain smooth shifts. That adaptive learning is what allows a DSG to perform consistently across its entire service life. But the learned data can become corrupted. Extended periods of aggressive driving, battery disconnects, software updates, skipped DSG service where degraded fluid throws off the learning parameters. Any of these can cause the mechatronic to learn incorrect values, and once those incorrect values are established, every shift that follows uses wrong pressures and timing. The symptoms appear gradually. Shifts that used to be imperceptible become noticeable. Light shuddering during engagement, hesitation when pulling away from a stop, occasional harsh shifts during normal driving. Most owners feel these symptoms and immediately assume internal mechanical wear. And when the diagnostic scan shows adaptation values out of specification, that assumption appears confirmed. What almost nobody tries is resetting the adaptations and letting the system relearn from scratch. The procedure with VCDs is straightforward. Connect to the OBD2 port. Select Control Module O2 for gearbox. Navigate to Adaptation or Basic Settings. Find the Adaptation Reset function, often under Channel 000. Execute the reset and all learned clutch values are cleared. After reset, the first 50 to 100 kilometers are critical. Drive gently, smooth acceleration, progressive throttle inputs, mixed conditions, city and highway. What you're doing is teaching the mechatronic accurate clutch engagement parameters from a clean state. If you drive aggressively immediately after reset, it learns aggressive values and may not settle properly. OBDeleven performs the same reset through its app interface under gearbox adaptations. Now here's the critical disclaimer. This reset doesn't repair mechanical damage. If the clutches are genuinely worn beyond service limits, if the mechatronic has internal hydraulic failure, or if there's physical damage inside the transmission, the reset won't fix it. But in a significant percentage of cases where DSG behavior has deteriorated and owners are told the transmission is failing, the actual problem is corrupted data and the reset resolves it completely. The reason this function is hidden is simple. Dealers make no money performing a 30-second reset. They make significant revenue replacing transmissions. So when a DSG comes in with adaptation values out of range, the diagnosis defaults to hardware failure rather than trying the free software solution first. This is the most expensive secret on this list. It's the function that could save you the price of a used car. And it's the perfect example of why the 1% of Volkswagen owners who know these hidden functions are the ones who never get caught by expensive repairs that could have been prevented. So there they are. 10 secrets Volkswagen doesn't advertise, dealers don't mention, and most owners never discover until something has already broken or been unnecessarily replaced. None of these secrets require expensive tools or dealer access to use, but all of them cost serious money to ignore. 99% of Volkswagen owners don't know these functions and they pay heavily for it, but now you are part of that 1%. If this video just taught you something about your Volkswagen that could genuinely save you money, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments which secret surprised you most. And if you know a VW owner who's still trusting dealer service intervals and has never heard of VCDs, send them this video before their next expensive lesson. I'll see you in the next one, because the most expensive repair is always the one you never knew you could prevent.